Right now on the news, a shocking number of Americans are out of work. Nearly 7 million people applying for unemployment last week alone, and that's just the beginning. More New Yorkers beating the coronavirus are getting out of the hospital, but new infections are up by thousands. The Democratic National Convention has been postponed, plus this.
A Catholic school student is using a viral video to make her classmates feel connected during distance learning, because that's what friends are for. I'm Emily Druby, and that's coming up.
And it's a life and death decision doctors must make. Which segment of the population gets the care needed to hopefully survive COVID-19? A Catholic ethics expert is weighing in. Your news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. More New Yorkers are getting out of the hospital cured of the coronavirus, but new infections are up a lot by the thousands. And there's stunning news on the jobs front. Millions of Americans are now unemployed. More and more people going online to apply for unemployment benefits. Just last week, 6.6 million filed new jobless claims in the U.S. The Labor Department says that brings the two-week total to 10 million Americans filing for unemployment insurance because of the coronavirus essentially shutting down the economy. Here in New York, another thing that continues to go up, the number of new cases. But the governor says the number of patients leaving the hospital is also increasing.
7,400 patients discharged, that's up 1,292. That's good news. Number of people going to the hospital is going up. Number of people coming out of the hospital is going up.
But the virus continues to take a toll. It's putting a strain on funeral homes. So the city has set up 45 mobile morgues, and hospitals are overwhelmed.
If a person comes in and needs a ventilator and you don't have a ventilator, the person dies.
Governor Andrew Cuomo with the blunt reality. The state needs more ventilators to help patients with COVID-19. He says right now there's only enough in the stockpile for 6 more days.
Supplies are an ongoing challenge. The PPE is an ongoing challenge, the gowns, the gloves, and the ventilators.
So Cuomo put a call out to local businesses to start making supplies, showing a phone number and email address for them to connect.
If you have the capacity to make these products, we will purchase them, and we will pay a premium, and we will pay to convert or transition your manufacturing facility to a facility that can do this.
He also gave a shout out to the volunteers who are helping us fight this battle.
God bless America. 21,000 people have volunteered from out of state to come into New York State. I thank them. I thank their patriotism. I thank their dedication and passion to their mission of public health.
The governor says they're also shifting staff from upstate hospitals that are less impacted here to downstate hospitals to help out. The number of infected New Yorkers is still rising. Across the state, there are over 92,000 confirmed cases, and the death toll stands at more than 2,300. Nearly 3,400 patients are hospitalized in intensive care. In the city, there are almost 52,000 people with the disease. A grim new rule for New York City's paramedics. If someone's in cardiac arrest and you can't revive them in the field, don't bring them to the emergency room. Under normal circumstances, if someone has had cardiac arrest, even if there's no blood flow, EMS will perform CPR while en route to the hospital. Emergency officials hope the new measure will alleviate an influx of patients from going to hospitals that have no hope of being saved. And stay with us. We're talking medical ethics during this pandemic. There's a lot of life and death scenarios out there, and John Brehaney of the National Catholic Bioethics Center will be here with some answers. That's still ahead in this newscast. The Democratic National Convention will be postponed until August due to coronavirus concerns. In a historic change, the convention committee said the event will now be held the week of August 17th in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It was originally slated for mid-July. The announcement came just hours after former Vice President Joe Biden, the likely nominee, said he expected such a delay. Here in the Brooklyn Diocese, Catholic school kids are thriving tonight. They're learning their lessons thanks to the great work of their teachers and parents. Currents News' Emily Druby reports the children are full of hope and they know what friends are for.
So let's talk about math.
The new classroom is a dining room table.
25 divided by 5 is equal to...
Students and teachers in the Brooklyn Diocese are now in their third week of distance learning because of the COVID-19 crisis.
It's getting easier every day. The kids are getting better at logging into different websites.
They've been learning online since March 17th, about a week before New York City public schools. Now they're scheduled to continue online through April 20th. They're off for spring break, Holy Thursday and Good Friday.
How much is a nickel worth?
While there were some kinks to iron out, this new way of learning seems to be working. But one thing is missing: friends.
When they're isolated, I think it's just so lonely for them. They're so used to coming into school every day. And some of these kids in my class have been together since pre-K and maybe even nursery. So they're basically like family.
St. Kevin Catholic Academy student Francesca came up with a fix.
For sure, that's what friends are for.
Inspired by a video of celebrities singing the song Imagine, the third grader created her own video with her classmates singing the song, That's What Friends Are For.
That's what friends are for.
People are sad, so it could make them feel better and not alone anymore. And it makes me feel like that my friends are always there for me.
Posting it online as a reminder that through the good times and the bad times, they'll be on each other's side.
A lot of people see it and they remember their friends because they don't get to see their friends that much.
Through a difficult situation, the Catholic Academy students keep shining and smiling. In Manhattan, Emily Druby, Currents News.
Yesterday, we told you a Brooklyn priest is aboard that United States aircraft carrier where dozens have been infected with COVID-19. Today, sailors who test negative will disembark in Guam. We're not sure if Father Mark Bristol is among that group, but none of the sailors who have tested positive are being hospitalized and none are in critical condition. Navy officials say those who disembark will have to stay in quarantine at a Sheraton hotel for the mandatory 14-day period. The sailors are expected to exit the Roosevelt within the next 24 hours. There are also some troubled waters in the South China Sea. Reports show China in recent days has been conducting military drills and deploying large-scale military assets to the maritime area. Critics claim they're taking advantage of the fact that China has mostly contained the coronavirus crisis, while the U.S. is still struggling. And here are some more headlines. Taiwan is donating food and medical supplies to the Vatican to help the church get through the pandemic. Mexico's bishops are calling on employers to avoid laying off workers, saying we're all in the same boat. Pope Francis is urging everyone to follow the example of Mother Teresa and seek out those suffering from the disease. A Massachusetts pastor is being reinstated to his post after being cleared of sexual abuse allegations. Father Peter Gorey had always denied any wrongdoing, and an independent investigation could not substantiate the accusation. Prominent attorney Mitchell Garabedian had represented the pastor's accuser, who stopped participating in the investigation. Garabedian is the same lawyer who told the Associated Press last November he would file a lawsuit accusing Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio of abuse from 50 years ago, but still has not. The bishop has consistently denied that allegation. Australia's highest court will deliver its ruling next week on whether to overturn the convictions of Cardinal George Pell, the most senior Catholic convicted of child sex abuse. A single judge will deliver the verdict on Tuesday. It had heard Pell's appeal earlier in March before the hearings were canceled due to the coronavirus crisis. The court's decision could be the last chance for the Pope's former finance minister to clear his name. Cardinal George Pell maintains his innocence. The bells will ring across the Diocese of Brooklyn. Up next, Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio's important announcement everyone needs to hear. Also ahead, there's not enough ventilators to go around, so who lives and who dies? A Catholic ethics expert is here to talk about this morbid dilemma. As Holy Week approaches, the Vatican is preparing a special Mass and prayer intention. Details are ahead. 15 years later, looking back, the anniversary of St. John Paul II's death. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. The pandemic is raising the most fundamental moral questions about life and death. New York's healthcare system is overwhelmed. We're running out of hospital beds and life-saving equipment. There's now the prospect of medical rationing. Joining us now is John Brehaney, an ethicist with the National Catholic Bioethics Center. And John, a huge issue facing doctors and nurses, they don't have enough ventilators for all the patients who need them. This is a moral issue as much as a medical one, deciding who gets treated and who doesn't. What are the ethical considerations?
Yeah, in times of panic or even pandemic, I think we have to step back and root ourselves in our most basic responsibilities and duties. And in the ethical life, we always want to avoid causing or intending harm, and as much as possible to protect and promote human goods like life and dignity and health. So now when you come to this issue of ventilators, I think what people are struggling with now, I think they're working through the issues. How do we avoid basing decisions on anything irrelevant or bias, like age or disability or race or anything? And the good that they're trying to do is to say, how can we steer patients to the right levels of care, get the patients in the most need to the levels of care that are going to do them the most good. So they're working through that right now, and we're helping some of them.
Oh, that's good to hear. The Emergency Medical Services Council of New York is issuing guidance to EMS first responders that if a cardiac arrest victim's heart can't be restarted, don't bring that person to the hospital. Instead, the patient will be left to die. What's your view of this decision?
I would say one thing that this pandemic is doing is it is upsetting business as usual. It's upsetting the customary way we do things. In fact, it's upsetting even some of the good things we do on a daily basis. This is very unfortunate, but I think people are being called to make hard choices, and I think they're trying to make them well. In other words, what they're saying is, those patients in cardiac arrest may be brought into an ER, which is full of patients with severe respiratory conditions from COVID-19, and one of the worst comorbidities you can have, one of the worst health conditions to get the disease with is cardiac disease.
Right. And the Catholic Church, as you know, values every human life and is strongly opposed to things like euthanasia and assisted suicide. How should we as a church behave during this terrible crisis, and could lines get a little blurred?
Well, they can get blurred. I think in general, this is really a time to pray. I mean, to pray to God for all the patients out there, the people suffering, the healthcare workers, and so on. It really is time to pray. I think it's also a time to step out and act and volunteer, maybe in a way we never think to in our daily lives. We run around and we're all trying to cover a number of bases. But in particular, to think of healthcare institutions or workers and what we can do to provide them, again, with prayer support, with some sort of emotional or other form of comfort support, and maybe even volunteer in ways with deliveries or something that would make their lives easier to bear right now.
Yeah, coronavirus is really tough on our medical professionals, all the doctors and nurses out there, everybody else. They're being put into roles they never expected, deciding who lives or who dies. What moral guidelines should they rely on?
Well, I think the church certainly upholds the notion that humans have the ability to make good ethical decisions. We need the help of grace to do those well. But people need to exercise the virtues, like prudence is a virtue that perfects our decision-making capability, and fortitude. So again, I think as they make these decisions, they have to avoid bad reasons for making them. Fear, the way we've always done things, even fear of lawsuits, and say, let's focus on the most essential things. What is going to protect human life, human health, and to do their best with the limited resources that they have.
All right, John Brehaney, an ethicist with the National Catholic Bioethics Center. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
The Vatican has okayed a pandemic mass to fight the coronavirus crisis. The Congregation of Divine Worship approving the texts after receiving multiple requests. The liturgy can be celebrated any day except during the solemnities and feasts of Holy Week. The Vatican office also added those suffering from the pandemic as a new prayer intention for the Good Friday service. Today is the 15th anniversary of Pope John Paul II's death. He was one of the most influential leaders of the turn of the century. Melissa BUTZ takes a look back from the Vatican.
15 years ago at 9:37 p.m., St. Peter's Square was completely full, and Catholics around the world were weeping. Pope John Paul II had died. This was the last blessing Pope John Paul II gave pilgrims on earth. It was Wednesday, March 30th. His suffering was evident to all. The day after, he was unable to celebrate Mass and he received his last communion. The Pope's spokesman confirmed the end was near.
Il Papa lucido, straordinariamente sereno, con la logica relativa a difficoltà di respirare. Immagine nuova. Difficoltà respiratoria, logica. Se ci sono altri aggiornamenti, poi ci teniamo in contatto.
On April 2nd, 2005, the light went on in his room, and it was confirmed he had died. Many church rituals and the blessing of his remains took place in the Apostolic Palace, including the destruction of the papal ring and the sealing of his apartments. An estimated 3 million people came to say goodbye. Many leaders attended his funeral. For a few hours, they seemed to put aside any disputes as a tribute to a common friend.
Possiamo essere sicuri che il nostro amato Papa sta adesso alla finestra della casa del Padre, ci vede e ci benedice. Sì, ci benedica, Santo Padre.
Just 6 years later, Pope John Paul II was beatified by his successor, Benedict XVI, before Pope Francis declared him a saint on April 27, 2014. His tomb in St. Peter's Basilica is now one of the most visited sites by pilgrims. Pope John Paul II had a 26-year papacy. He suffered from Parkinson's disease for 13 years before he died at age 84. His funeral was held on April 8th, 6 days after he died, and around 3 million people were in attendance. At the Vatican, Melissa BUTZ, Currents News.
Palm Sunday around the world will be celebrated differently this year. All services will be streamed live, including within the Diocese of Brooklyn. Here's the schedule for live Palm Sunday Masses to be aired on Net TV this Sunday. 8 a.m. Italian, 9 Creole, 10 Polish, 11 English, noon Spanish, 1 p.m. Korean, and 2 p.m. Mandarin Chinese. Churches may be closed in the Diocese of Brooklyn because of the virus, but they remain strong symbols of hope. Brooklyn Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio is asking every parish in the diocese to ring their church bells every day at 3 o'clock, beginning tomorrow, Friday, April 3rd. It's called Bells of Hope and will continue until the crisis is over. As Holy Week approaches, the bishop selected 3 p.m. to coincide with the death of Christ and of divine mercy. Pregnancy and the coronavirus, what to expect during delivery, and is breastfeeding still an option during the pandemic? Important information for mothers next.
That's what friends are for. Keep smiling.
And those cute kids from St. Kevin's Academy that Emily Druby told us about, we have their whole musical performance for you. Don't miss it.
That's what friends are for.
A pregnancy can cause fears and anxieties under normal circumstances. That's only natural. Add to that the unknowns of the pandemic, and that's enough to cause stress levels to spike. Mandy Gaither offers some insights on what a new mother can expect during these unexpected times.
First things first, some good news. When it comes to the coronavirus, there is no current evidence that pregnant women are at a higher risk of catching the disease. However, a woman's immune system is lowered during pregnancy, making them more susceptible to illnesses in general. So continue to avoid anyone who is sick. Protect yourself by coughing or sneezing into your elbow and wash your hands. When it comes time to deliver, you may only be allowed one visitor with you at the hospital. That's because COVID-19 is extremely contagious, and resources in hospitals across the country are spread thin. Check with your hospital to see if there are any changes in their policies. And what if the mother has already been diagnosed with COVID-19? The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention don't have enough data to determine if a mother can pass the virus to her baby while in utero or during birth. In either case, separating the baby and the mother may be recommended to protect the infant's weak immune system. There is no current evidence showing the virus is found in breast milk, but if a mother has tested positive for coronavirus, the decision on whether or not to breastfeed should also be made with her health care providers. I'm Mandy Gaither.
And if you have a medical question, the doctor is in. Send us your questions to askthedoctor@desalesmedia.org. We'll have a doctor join us on Fridays to answer questions. Again, the email is askthedoctor@desalesmedia.org. Finally, tonight, New York is full of men and women risking their lives so the rest of the city can survive this pandemic. Some of those unsung heroes, the delivery workers and grocery store employees who make sure we can get supplies without stepping outside, especially the bare necessities like food and water. The critical workers are proud to take the risk because they understand the need.
I'm a New Yorker. I typically don't get scared of anything. But you know what? It's essential that I'm out here. I deliver medicine regularly. We deliver packages to the hospital regularly. I just feel, for lack of a better word, privileged that we're still able to work and do our job.
There's a little risk coming outside every day to do your job, but I appreciate it. I kind of feel like a superhero in a sense, saving the world.
I am definitely afraid of, getting this virus. I'm doing everything I can to protect myself, and I'm here for the community.
UPS alone has 500,000 employees around the world still out. Among grocery stores, more than 2 million workers across the country. And we thank those brave men and women for their service. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. We leave you with more of those wonderful kids at St. Kevin's Catholic Academy singing That's What Friends Are For. Good night.
Oh, keep smiling, keep shining, knowing you can always count on me. For sure, that's what friends are for. For good times, for bad times, I'll be on your side forevermore. That's what friends are for. Keep smiling, keep shining, knowing you can always count on me. Oh, for sure, 'cause I know what my friends are for. For the good times and for the bad times, I'll be on your side forevermore. That's what friends are for.